Hey y'all, so I wanted to show and play for you this little add-on tom I got. This is from Pearl. This is the Session Studio Select in gloss barnwood brown. It's a 8-inch tom with a 7-inch depth. Now I've had an existing Pearl kit for about 25 years from the Prestige Session Select line. It did me great for years, and it has tom sizes 10, 12, 14, 16. The problem I face though is that in 2023, I got a DW kit, which added one more tom, an 8-inch tom. I've been using those DWs at home, but the Pearls I still take out on the road. So I needed to have an 8-inch tom for that purpose. And I did a little bit of hunting around, and I thought that this would pair well with my kit. And I'll tell you why in a second. It has to do with the shell configuration. This drum, the Session Studio Select, has 6 plies, 5.4 millimeter each. There's 4 outer plies of birch and then 2 inner plies of mahogany. And the reason why I thought that this guy would do well with my Prestige Session Select is that these older drums, the Prestige Session Selects, have maple mahogany toms. So I was thinking that something that had mahogany would work well with this. The mahogany should allow the drums to have a little bit of a lower, deeper tone to them. Now this drum has 60-degree bearing edges on it. It also has Pearl's OptiMount mounting system, which means that for as far as hardware to mount this thing, you're going to want to get either Pearl's Unilock or gyro lock tom arms. Now, one thing that's actually pretty strange about this drum, if you look at it straight on here, you'll see there are 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 lugs on it. Not an even number. I think this is the only drum I've ever owned that had an odd number of lugs for the rim. My DW collectors that I got, that has 6 lugs instead of 5. So this is going to be a little strange for me for tuning. I'm used to when you tighten a lug that it can affect the tension of the adjacent lugs and the lug across from it. But now there is no lug across from it. So we'll see if this gives me any trouble when I try to tune it. Okay, so let's do an initial sound test with this guy. So this is with the original heads on it at this point. Without me having done any tuning to it, I've just thrown it up and I got my old Pearls on here. Even though the other heads on the Pearls are a little beat up, we'll have a little bit of a comparison there. I'm miking these with condenser mics on the top. It's little small diaphragm condensers made by Beyerdynamic. Those are going into API preamps before the computer. Once in the computer, I'm not doing any other processing on the toms. I'm not gonna chop them up. I'm not gonna put in a gating. There's not gonna be anything in the computer on them. But my bass drum and my snare, that will have additional processing. Okay, so besides the tom not being mounted in a great spot, I have a bigger issue, which is that it doesn't sound that great, doesn't sound that open. You know, I have these other toms with beat up heads, and despite the heads being beat up, they still have a more open sound than this drum out of the box. Why is that? I think it's mostly due to the drum head. The heads that came on the Pearl, both the top and the bottom, they have the Pearl branding on it, but it also says Remo. But you can kind of see on the bottom of this batter side head, it says UT. Now this basically means that this drum head was not manufactured in the US. It wasn't made in Remo's US factory. Okay, so I think that means that the quality of these heads are probably a bit lower than what you would normally expect from a Remo head. Additionally, this is some sort of a pinstripe style head, whereas my other toms are ambassadors, which would have a much more open sound. So I thought, you know what, let me swap this out with a real ambassador head and do another comparison. One thing to note is that when I did take this guy off, and when I was trying to put the ambassador on, I noticed that, you know, again, I only did some, you know, quick basic sound tests on this thing, but this head is actually, it's warped. It's a little hard to kind of see, but there's a line. If you imagine that there's a line right here where the head is sticking in, okay? So it's the head right out of the box is uneven and probably wasn't, you know, able to reverberate correctly across it. So good riddance to this stock head. We're going to do this again with an ambassador head on, and we'll hear how this sounds relative to the other pearls that I've got. So all in all, I say the sound is significantly better just by replacing that batter side head. At some point, I probably should replace the resonant side head as well, but it seems like that side is probably okay for now, so I can leave that on for a little bit. And I think this is going to pair well when I go to play shows with the pearls. Once I get the top side heads replaced, I think this is going to blend in well. People, you know, the finish is pretty close too, so I think people aren't even going to notice that this is an add-on tom. I think it's going to work pretty well. Hopefully that helped you guys out if you were trying to eyeball some add-on toms, something that is maybe not so expensive like a collector's drum, probably not as good sounding as a collector's, but if you're just looking for something that's, you know, more mid-range, I think this is going to work out pretty well. I do have other content coming out all the time: cymbal reviews, stick reviews, lessons, recording tips, the whole gambit of drum related content. So if you don't want to miss out, then don't forget to subscribe. Until next time, peace.